Hi guys, it's Rach. Welcome to a new episode of the show and sort of part 2 in this week's conversation about excuses. I'd love to just jump right in with you guys because you can't actually see it if you're watching on video, but behind the camera, I have pulled a whiteboard out of my closet here in the studio and it looks like a serial killer wrote all over it. It's like crazy notes and ideas because I had so much information for y'all today that I was like, oh, I got to keep this straight so that I can make sure to the best of my ability, give you as much information as I possibly can. Excuses. Okay, the big thing that I want to talk about is that most of us don't realize why we allow excuses to hold us back. Like, what is the real reason that you keep making excuses that keep you from your dreams? There is one major reason why you keep making excuses that are holding you back from where you want to go in life. And it's not what you think. But before I get into that one big reason, I feel like it's important to first establish that there are two kinds of, and I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, excuses. The difference in these two excuses, to me, is realistic excuses versus egotistic excuses. Allow me to explain. Realistic excuse is you just had a new baby. You're dealing with an illness. You're caring for an aging parent. You just started a new job. You're struggling with your mental health. There are realistic and real excuses that every single person on this planet will deal with at some point. There are very realistic reasons why your excuse is valid. I talk about this a ton in the new book, that a younger version of me, one that pushed myself so hard and worked towards burnout and hustled and did all of these things, I would tell myself there is no excuse. There's no excuse too big. Like, you can push past it. You can overcome. And look, in a lot of ways, that kind of mentality can get us to take action. It can be motivating. It can get you where you want to go, but it always comes at a cost. It always comes at a cost. And for those of us who have people counting on us, whether that's family members, children, a partner, a team at work, there are certain times where the excuse is justifiable. And it doesn't mean that your dream can't be pursued. It doesn't mean that this thing you want for your life won't come true. It just means that maybe right now you can't go full tilt. Maybe right now in this season, you have to pull back just a little bit. You can't sprint. You can't go full pedal to the floor, 1,000 miles an hour, take no prisoners. Maybe this is a season where you have to be really honest with yourself and go, okay, yes, I want this thing. And I also have 3 kids under the age of 4 and a full-time job. And I feel like I'm struggling a little bit. So this probably isn't the right time to add something new to the mix. I just really want, before we get into this conversation, and I promise, gonna motivate you, gonna give you ideas to get past the excuses, because that is what most people are gonna come to this podcast episode for, is like, tell me how to get around the voice in the back of my head that tells me that I can't because of these reasons. Here for it. You know I got you. But before we get to that, how do we get around the excuses thing? It's really important that we acknowledge that there are very good excuses in our lives. And if we're in a season where one of those very good excuses is rearing its head, that we should be mindful of that. Doesn't mean that you need to give up or quit. It just means that you need to be aware that you might be a bit limited as you move forward right now. So that's a realistic excuse. Then there's the other kind, which is actually, I think, the majority of the excuses that we make in this life that hold us back are not realistic. They are egotistic. The excuse is created by our ego to keep us safe. So what is the real reason why your excuses hold you back? They are a form of self-protection. Think about it. Whatever excuse you have used in your life, whether it was, I'm just not built the way my sister's built, or that's for other kinds of people, I'm not smart enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not connected enough, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough brains. Whatever excuse you tell yourself is an external factor. Your ego, which at all costs is trying to keep its sense of self, whatever you believe at your most core level, whatever you believe that you are, whoever you believe that you are, your ego will do everything in its power to hold that to be true. It will find examples again and again and again that will continue to speak to who you believe you are at the most fundamental level. Okay? So hold that in mind. Your ego is doing everything it can to keep the vision that you have created of yourself. If you are making an excuse in any area of your life for anything that you think would be nice or awesome, or yeah, I probably should do this, or maybe I should do that, but whatever excuse you fill in the blank with is your ego blaming on something other than itself. It's saying, well, I could run a marathon. I probably could run a marathon, but people in my family just aren't athletic. Well, I probably could start my own business, but I'm not smart enough, so honestly, I'll probably fail at that thing. Or I probably could do this, but that. And maybe you're thinking, wait a minute, the ego is supposed to protect us. Why would it come up with some excuse like, I'm not smart enough to pull this thing off? Remember, your ego is set so that it keeps the vision it has of itself, right? So it could potentially be less threatening to your ego to think of you as not as smart as it would be to push yourself into a situation where you would be uncomfortable, where you would have to do hard work, where you would potentially be embarrassed, where you would potentially feel shame. All of the things that might come along with starting this business you dream of starting, your ego can find something simple like, I'm not smart enough, rather than face the fact that starting your own business would be hard as hell. And honestly, you have way more fear about facing something difficult and challenging than you do about whether or not you're not smart enough. Because actually, if you think about it, most of the excuses that our ego tells us is true are things that we could fairly easily navigate around. So let's use starting a business as an example. You think about starting a business, the voice in the back of your head tells you you're not smart enough. It aligns with maybe a story you've told yourself a million times, or something that you heard as a child, or maybe you always thought that your big brother was smarter than you were. Whatever it is, it aligns with a belief that you already have. It's low-hanging fruit. You're not smart enough. But simultaneously, you must know that something like how to run a business is a skill that can be acquired, is knowledge that can be learned, is something that you can do, right? You can get smarter. We all can get smarter. We all can learn. Anything your ego tells you, if you actually broke it apart, it's made of fluff. There's no there. You could very easily clap back at that belief system, but if you clapped back at that belief system, then you'd have to face what's really going on. So what I want you to understand is that this excuse that you're making doesn't make you a bad person. This is built into the most basic fundamental levels of being a human being. And also, it's there to keep you safe. I think many times the parts of ourselves that we have been taught to dislike were actually created as a protective mechanism. And if you can see them as that, it doesn't mean you have to accept them, because I'm not about accepting the excuses and accepting the limiting beliefs that keep us stuck where we are. But if you can at least acknowledge like, oh, hey, thank you. I see. I see what you're trying to point out to me. And in a minute, I want to talk you through how I think excuses are actually messengers that can be really helpful to us. But let's just start with this idea of a realistic excuse versus an egotistic excuse. When you hear an excuse, when you think of an excuse, when you hold on to an excuse for why you are here, why it's not working out the way you want it to, why you can't find love, why you can't find a better job, why you're in a bad mood all the time, whatever excuse you hold on to, if you could come back to inner wisdom, if you could get quiet and just ask yourself what is true. Is this a realistic excuse based on something that is going on in my life? Like if you're under an extreme amount of stress at work, then it's pretty justifiable why you might be exhibiting signs of stress in other areas of your life. But then you have to be real with yourself and ask, is there a way for me to improve this? Is this excuse something that's actually holding water? Or is this excuse existing because my ego is trying to protect me from the fact that I don't want to take on something that is harder? Is this realistic or is this egotistic? That's where you start. And this conversation is for the egotistic excuses, not for the realistic ones. Those you need to listen to. I think your inner wisdom will tell you if this is a season where you need to allow yourself to hold space for how hard something is. But if you know in your heart of hearts, in your gut, in your spirit, if you know what? I keep making an excuse and it's keeping me right where I am, and I do not want to go into this new year and still be doing the same thing. I do not want to fast forward until the end of the year next year and still be in this exact place. I have got to get my shit together for 2025. If that is what you are telling yourself, I would love to take you through some ideas for how to shift your mindset when it comes to those egotistical excuses. The second thing I want you to think about is this idea that the egotistical excuse is there as a protective mechanism. It is a protective mechanism. And I think the power of this idea is that you stop judging yourself. You stop judging yourself. I was having coffee with a friend of mine who is just in the hardest, most unimaginable situation. Their child has cancer. It's fucking horrendous. It's so awful. I was sitting with her and we were talking about it. In those situations, it's like, I don't know what to say. There's no right thing to say. So I just keep showing up, have them over for dinner. Like, let's make you laugh. Let's get your mind off of this. Let's go to coffee. Let me hold space for all the things. Even if all the things are you want to sit here and cry for an hour. Even if all the things are you want to cuss and talk about how unfair this is and that it's all BS. Like, I'm here. I will hold that space for you. I think, on a side note, when we watch someone else go through a hard thing, whether it's a very close friend or just an acquaintance, I think human instinct is that we want to help and we don't always know how. And so to the best of my ability, my instinct is always, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to show up and you tell me if I'm not showing up in the right way, but I'm just going to show up until you tell me otherwise. So I'm having coffee with my friend and she's crying and she's talking to me and she says, I have to get my mindset right. I have to get my mindset right because it's so important when you're battling something like that. And not only are you battling it, but your child's going through it. It's just brutal and nobody should have to endure it. And I realize as she's telling me, like she's just being so hard on herself. She's like, I got to get my mindset right, but I'm afraid and I don't know how to not be afraid, but I can't be afraid because I have to be strong. She's telling me all this stuff. And I was like, of course you're fucking afraid. Of course you're afraid. You are allowed to be afraid. I said, you are not a Navy SEAL. You have not trained for the last 20 years to be in a situation like this. No parent should ever have to go through this. No kid should ever have to go through this. Why do you think that you should be excellent at managing the fear and the stress of the situation that you're inside of? oh my God, why do we do this to ourselves? Like, why do we believe that we shouldn't experience a normal human reaction to something hard? And y'all, the ego wouldn't be trying to make excuses for you if there wasn't fear at the core of that belief system. So be graceful with yourself. Stop judging what is happening. Stop judging the thought. Because I don't know about you, the judgment of my thoughts has caused me to make way more bad choices and go into kind of like a really negative habit loop because I'm judging the thought that I just had or the action that I just took in a state of stress. So if you can see the excuse without judgment, and I was saying this to her because it's something I've learned to do with meditation, is just to watch the thought sort of pass across my mind, but watch it without fear. Watch it without hatred. Watch it without bitterness. Watch it as if it's something completely separate than yourself. Watch the thought flash across your mind's eye. Like, have you ever seen the Goodyear blimp? I don't know if they have that in other countries, but for those of you who are in the US, you know the Goodyear blimp that rolls out or flies out at certain sporting events, and around the bottom of the blimp there's like this LED screen that'll say like buy Goodyear tires or like Happy New Year or like go Lakers, right? There's like a message that's circling around the bottom of the blimp. That's what you need to do with your thoughts. You're just watching. I'm not watching the Goodyear blimp LED lights and going like, how dare it say go Lakers? How dare it tell me to have a nice day? No, I'm just like, oh, there's a blimp. Oh, there's what they wrote on it. And the same should be true for those thoughts that we have. If you're having a negative thought, if you're having a limiting belief, if you're seeing something in your mind's eye, if your ego is feeding you that excuse, what might it be like to see that flash across your mind without judging it? Oh, the thought says, you're too ugly to date a guy like that. You're too old to go back to school. You're too young to start a business. You're too dumb to run for local office. You're too broken to ever be a good parent. Those thoughts are going to be tied to things that will feel real for us if you don't separate yourself from what they are. Dr. Amen, when I went to see a neurologist years ago, and he told me, you don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. And that was earth-shattering for me because I did believe every stupid thing I thought. But if you can allow yourself to just see the thought, not judge it, you get some separation, which means it's not something you have to immediately act on. So if the excuse is protection, we've established that we're not going to judge it when we see that excuse show up, which means we also don't have to align with it. We don't have to attach ourselves to that thing. Then that can allow us to ask this question. Am I willing to trade comfort for potential? Am I willing to trade my comfort for potential? And the great thing about questions is that there are all kinds of answers and that they change based on what's going on in our life. I think we can all admit that we have times in life where we are not willing to trade comfort for potential. But my instinct is that if you are watching this or listening to it, you're interested in how you can give yourself permission and courage to start letting go of comfort in order to get closer to the potential you know that you have trapped inside of you. So the third thing to ask yourself when it comes to this excuse is, what is the cost of believing in this excuse? What is the cost? I have talked a lot about who I'm going to be. I've talked a lot to you guys over the years. I've written about it in more than one book, this concept that I don't want to regret things when I'm old. I don't want to be 90 years old and think to myself that I could have done more, that I could have done better, that I could have pushed, that I could have dreamed bigger, that I could have built something, that I could have had more impact on my community. I don't want to get to the point that it's too late to live a good life, to realize that I should have lived a good life. So this idea of the cost of staying safe, of the cost of listening to the excuse. I would love to read you something from the new book if I can, because I think it sums this idea up perfectly. Okay. I want you to think really quick before I start this. Will you just think of an excuse that your ego tells you for why you're not where you want to be in a certain area of your life? And then I want you to listen to this. What's hard for you is hard for you. Ideally, as you move through challenges and push outside of comfort zones and keep going because you must, ideally you become more resilient, grittier. But at any given moment, most of us have an easily accessible and very good justification for why our dream is so freaking impossible to pursue. Those are the realistic excuses. No excuses looks good on a muscle tee at the gym and is a powerful slogan for people who've adopted it as a mantra. But of course, there are excuses. Really freaking good excuses. Legitimate reasons for why you don't have the time, energy, resources, connections, or support to pursue the dream of your heart. In fact, your excuse is so legitimate, nobody will blame you for giving up on your goal. Nobody except your heart. Nobody will blame you except your 10-year-old self who's been dreaming of this thing for 37 years and keeps waiting for you to make it realized. Nobody will blame you except your 92-year-old self who will look back on life with regret and know that they could have contributed more. But it won't take until you're 92 to have regrets, will it? You'll regret it long before then. You regret it now. You already have regrets about wasting your precious energy on stupid things that don't actually matter. You already know in your heart you've got more to give. You already know. But every time you start doing your work, taking your steps, walking in faith, every time those damn justifiable excuses pop right up again, something's got to give. Something will give. Either you'll find a way to push past the very legitimate reasons you have for staying right here in your comfort zone. You'll push past them and surprise yourself with the incredible things you're capable of. Or you'll live a life that's just good enough. Good, but not great. Good, but not exceptional. Good, but not who you know you were born to be. Your excuses are real, but so is your potential. The question you've got to ask yourself is, which one is bigger? Your dream or your excuse? That is from What If You Are the Answer, which comes out on January 7th. Head over to the website to get more information about the pre-order gift, which is so fantastic. And I feel like I can tell you guys about it because I feel like it will finally be done. Fingers crossed. Let me just take 2 seconds to tell you guys about the pre-order gift because it's so fantastic. If you've never gotten a pre-order gift from me, let me explain what they are. The best thing that you can ever do for an author that you enjoy their work or that you are thinking about buying their book, and I have to assume if you're hanging out with me on this podcast that you do enjoy my work, you like listening to my thoughts, and perhaps you are considering buying my new book when it comes out in January. That's amazing. You don't have to buy it. Go get it from the library or borrow it from a girlfriend. You don't have to spend money if you don't want to. But if you're thinking about spending money, the best thing that you can do for an author ever is pre-order the book. That means that you buy it in advance of the day it comes out. Even if it's just the day before, it's really helpful for an author. It's sort of a signal to retailers. Sorry, we're getting very in the weeds. But it's a signal to retailers that like, oh, this is how many books we need to print so that this many people can actually have access to a book when it comes out. It's a whole thing. For as long as I have been writing nonfiction books, starting back with Girl Wash Your Face, I would do pre-order campaigns, which were digital gifts that I would create for anybody who pre-ordered the book as a thank you from me for pre-ordering the book. And the pre-order gift for What If You Are the Answer is the best I've ever done. I mean, you will be the judge of whether or not it's the best I've ever done, but it is the most work I have ever put into a pre-order gift because I just wanted you guys to be able to take a deep dive into this book. What If You Are the Answer is essentially a guidebook for you to know you, not for you to know me. Not for you to get my ideas and my thoughts, but for you to go like, dude, what's going on with myself? How can I do better? How can I let go? How can I reach for more? How can I be kinder? How can I move with love? It is about you. And so I realized going into this, like, if this book is going to come out in January, which is the most fun for like New Year, what are we doing? What are we dreaming? And let's be honest, I am recording this episode after the election, which means that we are going in to 2025 with so much uncertainty, so much freaking uncertainty, especially if you live in America, there's so much uncertainty. And what I am reminded of again and again is that if you are looking outside yourself, if you are looking at external things to figure out how to do better and feel better and be healthier, if you are counting on other people, if you are counting on the media or the government or your partner or someone else to make your life better, you are always going to be at the whim of something else. But as we go into this new year, if we can more than ever double, triple down on knowing ourselves, on healing ourselves, on working on ourselves, on developing ourselves, on evolving ourselves, that is going to make the biggest impact in the world around us. That's going to have the greatest ripple effects. So all of that to say, I felt like if this book was going to come out in January, I wanted to give you as much resources as possible to help you take an even deeper dive into the new book. So let me tell you what you get if you pre-order. So you buy the book, you buy it anywhere you can buy a book. Could be Amazon, could be Barnes & Noble if you want the signed copy, could be Books A Million. If you're up in Canada, it's going to be Indigo. If you're in the UK, it's Waterstones. If you're in Australia, it's Readings. Like, you're going to go to your local place anywhere in the world, you pre-order the book, which means they're going to deliver it to you on January 7th. That's the day it comes out. But as soon as you pre-order, you head over to my website, missrachelhollis.com. And while you're there, if you want to get some recipes from my blogger days, because there's some really good ones, you go over to the website, you go to the page, you'll see it right there at the top of the homepage, missrachelhollis.com. You click on the thing to get your pre-order gift. It'll guide you through it, but just in case you're confused, you scroll down to the button that says upload your proof of purchase. That means a screenshot of the receipt that you purchased this book. You upload it. The computer checks it out. Make sure you didn't send us like a picture of your boobs or something. And then it sends you an email. Immediately upon verification that you have bought the book, it sends you an email with your first gift, because there's more than one. Your first gift, never before available digitally, is the Start Today Priority Planner. Y'all have been asking me for 2.5 years to please bring out the planner again, and this is my gift to you. So you are going to get a digital version of the Priority Planner. That means a quarterly review, a monthly calendar, monthly planning sessions, weekly planning sessions, daily planning sessions. If you have used the Priority Planner before, you know how fantastic it is. So the first gift you get immediately is the Start Today Priority Planner in digital format, which means you can print it out if you're someone who likes to write on paper, or we have created it in such a way that you can use it with any note-taking app so that you can actually write on your iPad into the Priority Planner. It is, just that is so exciting. Priority Planners were $35. So already like, boom, $35 gift for you for free. You can have it forever. That's coming immediately because I felt like it was really important that you get something right away. Then fast forward to January 7th. You have to have pre-ordered your book. January 6th, like midnight, before it turns to January 7th. If you've pre-ordered any time before that day, The second gift arrives on January 7th, which is the digital workbook I have created to go along with What If You Are the Answer. I am still building this because I have until January 7th to get it to you, but I can tell you guys it is already over 45 pages and I'm 10 chapters in. It is the most intensive, like thoughtful, it's journaling, it's workshopping, it's like everything that I could think of so that you could read this book and do your own deep dive. So I don't know how many pages that'll end up being, but that is something you get on January 7th along with, but wait, there's more, a video workshop I am creating just for you, doing something called a vision cast. I tell you about it in the new book, and it's sort of themed for that reason. But every January, my friends and I used to meet up at a local coffee shop, and we would do something we called a vision cast session. So we'd all sit around, we went through these questions, we went through this framework we developed over many years to help us plan out the year ahead. And I thought, wouldn't it be so cool if I could do a vision cast with you guys? So you will also get a video on January 7th along with your workbook, which means you'll get your book, your workbook, and the vision cast session, and the priority planner to start 2025 off right. So in this vision cast, you and I are going to plan out the year. We're going to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it. You could take that video and watch it in your book club or with your women's group or with your sister or with your husband, and you guys could work together to dream out what comes next. But I just wanted to arm you with as much good stuff as I could think of so that we can start 2025 really strong and really connected to our intuition and our inner knowing, and hopefully doing some really good, impactful things in the new year. So if you are thinking about potentially getting the book anyway, I would love it if you'd consider pre-ordering it. You can do it in any format, audio format, Amazon, get the physical copy, whatever you want to do. But that is now available for you to go over to the website and check out. And I hope you'll consider it because there's all kinds of goodies and you can start using that priority planner today. So that is so fun. Now let's get back to excuses. I want to finish up this thought process and give you just a little bit more to consider as you think of these excuses that are holding you back. The fourth thing I want you to think about is that your excuse is a messenger. Your excuse is a chance for you to understand something that is holding you back. I remember years ago interviewing someone on my podcast. It was early in my podcasting days, and she was a blogger that I had admired for years, and I was so excited to get to talk to her. And when I was interviewing her, she told me that she used to be very jealous of me. And I was totally floored. Number one, I thought it was such an honest and raw thing to say, because to admit that you're jealous of someone kind of puts you in a potentially negative, like what if someone reacts badly? So it's a potentially negative thing to say. But I was so astounded because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I love her. Like I was so enamored with her, and the fact that she was jealous of me felt completely upside down. But she said the most amazing thing. She was like, I was so jealous of you, and I finally had to admit to myself that I was jealous. And when I was able to admit that I was jealous, I got to ask myself, why? Why was I jealous? And when I had the courage to admit that I was jealous and I had the courage to ask that question, I realized I was jealous because I was watching you write a book and experience success as an author. And that was a secret dream of mine I had never said out loud and I had never told anybody. And when I watched you do it, it didn't come into my consciousness that I wanted to write. What came into my consciousness was I am jealous of her, I don't like her, I'm judging her, because what was really underneath it was a desire to do things that you are doing. Man, that's a good one. She has since written books, she's done amazing things, but I love this lesson and this reminder for us that the excuse is a messenger. It is pointing you toward an insecurity. It is pointing you towards a fear. It is pointing you towards a limiting belief. And if you have the courage to not let the excuse keep you stuck, but to allow the excuse to show you what you need to look at. Allow the excuse to show you what you need to see. So I have a challenge for us as a community. I'm going to do this myself this week, and I would love to challenge you to do the same thing, which is to think of an excuse in your life and to ask yourself what that excuse is pointing to. So I wanted to give you one from my own life that I think a lot of you can probably relate to. Because I was like, well, if I'm going to tell you to do this, let me show you a moment where I kind of figured this out in my own life. 15 years ago, I was not healthy in honestly any way. I mean that sincerely. Like, I was not healthy physically. I was not healthy mentally. I was not healthy emotionally. My nutrition was abysmal. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today. And I always say, like, I don't give a crap about weight. I don't care what you weigh. But I am barely 5'2", and 50 additional pounds on my frame made for a lot of discomfort, a lot of inflammation. It was an unhealthy state for me to be in. And that trickled throughout my whole life. And I had so many excuses about why I was living in that state. I mean, not just one. I think that most of us, if we're willing to deep dive and ask questions about why we're here, our ego is going to supply us with all sorts of answers. It's not going to be one excuse. It's going to be multiple. And a big one for me was all of the excuses I told myself for why I was so unhealthy. A really big one for me is this is the way everyone in my family is. You know, everyone in my family is unhealthy. We're all like this. This is how we're, quote, built. This is what our bodies look like. This is the way we eat. This is what we know. I mean, there's just so much crap going into supporting this belief that this is just the way that it is. I can see those excuses now for what they actually were, which was pointing me at the fact that I wanted to stay comfortable. Food was my friend. Food was my greatest source of comfort. Food was something I could access that fast that would make me feel good instantly. Now, it might not make me feel good 20 minutes after I made the decision to, eat 2 cheeseburgers, but in the moment, I felt great. You've probably heard me talk about the issues I had with binge eating, and then it would create this really awful cycle where I would just keep doing it over and over and over again. The excuse was like, yeah, this is just how it is. This is just how my family is. This is the, quote, way I was raised. But if I actually dig and excavate there, what I can see was it was the only comfort I knew. I did not know how else to self-soothe. Food was my way to soothe. And in order to not need to soothe, it would require years of therapy, years of unpacking trauma, years of digging deeper, fighting to find better coping mechanism. It required so much effort to not need food to self-soothe. But it was much easier for my ego to say, well, it's just the way my family is. Because you know what? Your family is nowhere around you. You are an adult. This is me at 41 talking to myself at 23. You don't have family surrounding you. You are by yourself, still holding on to grandma and grandpa and aunties and uncles and ancestors, and this is just the way we are, rather than face all of your own stuff. I mean, I could come up with, I'm sure, a million excuses for you guys. When I was in business, I used to tell myself I wasn't smart enough. And so I would constantly give my power away. I would constantly let people come into my business, whether it was accountants or executives, especially if they were older, especially if they were men. I would just believe anything that they said because I didn't have faith in myself. I didn't trust myself. I was like, oh, well, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. No, the reality is, of course I'm smart enough. Of course you're smart enough. What really was underneath there was, in order to not allow these people to run all over you, you're actually going to have to grow a backbone. You're actually going to have to be willing to engage in confrontation. You're actually going to have to change your behavior, which makes you super uncomfortable. So it's just easier to say you're not smart enough and let someone else run it for you. And oh, by the way, when that goes horribly wrong and they were the wrong person to hire and they mess everything up, you can tell yourself again that you weren't smart enough. And that's why you hired this person, because you weren't smart enough. And all you need to do is find someone smarter than you. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. Rather than face my unwillingness to put myself into situations where I would actually have to stand up for myself. Y'all, we can unpack what's under the excuses all day long and find some freaking skeletons in our closet that we have not wanted to face. But when you do, holy crap, you take all the wind out of the sail of this excuse that's been holding you here. And don't you want that? Aren't you tired of staying right where you are? Aren't you tired of the limiting belief? Aren't you tired of believing this BS narrative that someone gave you when you were 13? Now you're 52 and you still don't believe you're good enough? My God, it's not going to go away on its own. These things only go away if we're willing to confront them. So I hope that if you think about your excuses in a different way, it might allow you to take them on without fear and without judgment, but just to face them as they are. Because, oh man, I don't want to have regrets. And I don't think you do either. And the only way we're not going to have regrets is if we push ourselves outside the comfort zone and we try stuff and we get it wrong and we go again and we practice self-belief and we let go of limiting beliefs and we keep going. That's the only way. So let's do it. Let's have the courage to look at it. I hope this was a helpful conversation for you guys. If you know someone you think could use this, I'd love it if you shared the video or shared the podcast with them. As I said, I'm going to circle back later in the week answering questions. We're going to do an Ask Rach episode specifically around the excuses that hold us back. Why don't you feel like you're where you want to be? What goal could be better? You can DM me on Instagram or call into 737-400-4626. Leave me a voicemail. You don't have to leave your name. We don't even have to play your voice, but I would love to answer those questions for you. So we'll be back soon with more to talk about. But as always, I love you and I'm rooting for you.